Women who refused to get married were seen as outcasts in many ancient societies. However, there were some ancient women who chose to remain single despite societal pressure. Welcome back to our channel, where we bring history to life by exploring the daily routines, beliefs, diets, love lives, and struggles of people in ancient times. Some of the things discussed in this video may be offensive or disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Today we will be looking at what happened to women who refused to marry in ancient times. You'll be shocked by what these women had to endure. Make sure to watch until the end to find out. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on our awesome videos. Ancient Egypt, 2680 BC to 2055 BC, marriage was an important institution in ancient Egyptian society. For men, marriage was about procreation and ensuring the continuation of their bloodline. Women were seen as property and were often married off to ensure that they were under the protection of a male relative. However, if a woman did not want to get married, she could choose to remain single. In fact, there were many examples of elite Egyptian women who remained single throughout their lives. These women were often in charge of managing the household and estates of their families, and were given a great deal of power and respect as a result. One example is Hatshepsut, who was the fifth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. She was the first female pharaoh to rule Egypt, and she did so for over 20 years. Despite her position of power, Hatshepsut still had to deal with the expectations that she would marry. In order to legitimize her rule, she had to put on a false beard and wear male clothing. Even though she was not married, she was able to have children through a surrogate, and used this to further legitimize her claim to the throne. Another example of an elite Egyptian woman who remained single was Nefertiti, the wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Although she was married, she effectively acted as a regent during the later years of her husband's reign. After Akhenaten's death, she took control of the government and ruled as the official queen for several years. While it was not typical for women to hold such power in ancient Egypt, these two examples demonstrate that it was possible for women to lead and make significant contributions to society, even if they chose not to marry. Ancient India, 1500 BC to 500 AD. In ancient India, a woman's duty was often tied to her role as a wife, mother, and caretaker of the household. Society placed great importance on marriage, and women who remained unmarried were frequently looked down upon. However, some women defied these norms and chose paths guided by their own convictions and spiritual aspirations. One such woman was Gargi Vaishnavi, a renowned philosopher during the Vedic period. Born into a Brahmin family, Gargi received an education usually reserved for men. She mastered Vedic scriptures and participated in philosophical debates with the greatest scholars of her time. In the court of King Janaka, Gargi boldly questioned the sage Yajnavalkya in front of many, showcasing her intellectual brilliance. She never married, dedicating her life to knowledge and spiritual inquiry. Gargi is still remembered in Indian philosophy as a symbol of female wisdom and independence. Another example is Maitreyi, another philosopher of the same era, who was also a student and later wife of Yajnavalkya. But unlike traditional wives, Maitreyi asked her husband to teach her the secrets of immortality instead of giving her wealth. Her profound dialogues with Yajnavalkya are preserved in the Brihadar. Maitreyi's deep spiritual yearning and questioning spirit made her a respected figure in India's philosophical traditions, challenging the idea that women should remain confined to domestic roles. Ancient Greece, 800 BC to 146 BC. In ancient Greece, marriage was considered to be the most important institution in life for women. From the age of 5, girls were prepared for their future role as wives and mothers. They were taught how to cook, clean, and take care of children. At the age of 14 or 15, they would then be married off to a man chosen by their father. However, some Greek women refused to conform to this traditional role and chose to live their lives on their own terms. One example of such a woman was Aspasia of Miletus, a woman who lived in the 5th century BC. Aspasia was a hetaira, a type of female companion who was highly respected for her intelligence and wit. Unlike the other women in ancient Greece, Aspasia was not confined to the domestic sphere. She was able to travel and engage in public life, thanks to her wealthy lover, Pericles. Through her relationship with Pericles, Aspasia was able to become one of the most influential women in Athens. She was a patron of the arts and helped to promote the careers of many famous Athenian men, such as the philosopher Socrates. Aspasia was also known for her intelligence and ability to hold her own in philosophical discussions. She was said to have been the inspiration for the character of Socrates' wife in Plato's Republic. Another example of a Greek woman who rejected traditional gender roles was Hypatia, a philosopher and mathematician who lived in the 4th century AD. Hypatia was born in Alexandria, Egypt, and was the daughter of a philosopher. She was tutored by her father and was well versed in philosophy, mathematics, and astronomy. Hypatia was also highly respected by the men of her time and was often consulted on matters of philosophy and science. However, Hypatia's relationship with the men of Alexandria was not always harmonious. She was often criticized for her views on religion and was eventually put to death by a Christian mob. Ancient Sparta, 800 BC to 200 BC. Unlike most ancient societies, Sparta granted women more freedom and respect, especially in comparison to their counterparts in Athens. Spartan women were expected to be strong, raise warriors, and manage estates while their husbands were at war. Though marriage was encouraged for the sake of producing strong offspring, some Spartan women took pride in their independence and power. One famous Spartan woman was Gorgo, queen of Sparta and wife of King Leonidas. Gorgo was known for her intelligence and political insight. From a young age, she advised her father, King Cleomenes, and later played a diplomatic role beside her husband. She famously warned Spartan leaders of impending Persian trickery by deciphering a hidden message. Gorgo was outspoken, educated, and involved in affairs of the state, rare traits for women in the ancient world. Another example was the unnamed Spartan mother who, according to legend, told her son before battle, "Come back with your shield on it." This phrase symbolized the fierce strength of Spartan women who did not shrink in fear but encouraged bravery and honor in the harshest of circumstances. Many of these women's names are lost. Their legacy of pride, discipline, and resilience still shapes how Spartan women are remembered. Ancient Rome, 753 BC to 476 AD. In ancient Rome, women were expected to marry and bear children. If they did not comply, they were seen as bringing shame on their family. Roman women could only gain full legal status through marriage. If they were unmarried, they were considered to be under the control of their father or another male relative. However, some Roman women refused to follow this path and chose to live their lives on their own terms. One example was Livia Drusilla, the wife of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. When Augustus came to power, he was already married to Scribonia, but he soon divorced her and married Livia instead. Livia was much younger than Augustus and was said to be very beautiful. She was also highly intelligent and was able to navigate the complex world of Roman politics. Livia was able to outlive both Augustus and his heir, Tiberius, and she was eventually forced to commit suicide by Caligula, the third emperor of Rome. Despite her turbulent personal life, Livia is remembered as one of the most powerful women in Roman history. She was a shrewd politician and was able to wield considerable influence over her husband and the Roman Empire as a whole. Another example of a Roman woman who defied the odds was Julia Maesa. Julia was the grandmother of the Emperor Elagabalus, and the grandmother of the Emperor Julia Maesa was a member of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which produced 5 emperors from 27 BC to 68 AD. She was known for her beauty and intelligence, but she was also known for her ruthlessness and ambition. Julia was involved in the plots to assassinate both her son, the Emperor Claudius, and her grandson, the Emperor Nero. She was eventually exiled by Nero, but she was able to make a comeback when the empire was in turmoil following Nero's death. Julia Maesa was able to take advantage of the chaos and she was eventually declared empress. She reigned for only 2 years before being forced to abdicate in favor of her grandsons, the twin emperors, Caracalla and Geta. Despite her short reign, Julia Maesa was a significant figure in Roman history. She was one of the few women who was able to attain the purple, and she was also one of the few women who was able to outmaneuver the men of her time. Ancient China, 1600 BC to 200 AD. In ancient China, the ideal woman was someone who was married and had children. Unmarried women were often seen as outcasts and were not able to participate in many aspects of society. However, there were some Chinese women who chose to live their lives on their own terms and who did not feel the need to get married. One example of such a woman was Lady Huangsheng, who lived during the Eastern Han Dynasty. Lady Huangsheng was born into a wealthy family, and she was highly educated for the time period. She was well versed in poetry, music, and calligraphy, and she was also very intelligent. Rather than getting married, Lady Huangsheng chose to live a life of leisure. She traveled around China and enjoyed the beauty of the country. She also wrote poetry about her experiences. Despite her unconventional lifestyle, Lady Huangsheng was respected by the people of China. She was seen as a role model for young women who wanted to break free from the constraints of traditional society. Another example of a Chinese woman who rejected marriage was the poet Li Qingzhao. Li Qingzhao lived during the Song Dynasty and was one of the most famous poets of her time. Her poems often dealt with themes of love and loss, and she was highly praised by her contemporaries. Despite her success as a poet, Li Qingzhao's personal life was in shambles. She was married to a man she did not love, and she was constantly fighting with him. Eventually, Li Qingzhao decided enough was enough, and she left her husband. She spent the rest of her life traveling around China and writing poetry. Throughout her travels, she met many interesting people, and she wrote about them in her poetry. One of her most famous poems, A Dream, is about an old man she met, who was over 100 years old and still spry. Despite the hardships she faced in her personal life, Li Qingzhao was able to find happiness in her work. Her poetry is still studied today, and she is remembered as one of the greatest Chinese poets of all time. Ancient Japan, 300 AD to 1000 AD. In ancient Japan, women were generally expected to serve their families, remain loyal wives, and support their households quietly from the background. Still, some women rose above societal expectations and lived lives of influence, creativity, and independence. One remarkable figure was Empress Jittu, who ruled Japan in the late 7th century. After the death of her husband, Emperor Tenmu Jittu took the throne herself, a rare move for a woman at the time. She proved to be a capable and wise ruler, overseeing land reforms and the construction of the Fujiwara capital. Empress Jittu never remarried and ruled with authority and vision, showing that women could lead an empire with strength and wisdom. Another unconventional woman was Sei Shonagon, a court lady and author during the Heian period. Known for her wit and sharp observations, Sei wrote the Pillow Book, a collection of essays, anecdotes, and lists that provide a vivid glimpse into court life. While many women were silent in history, Sei's voice remains one of the most vibrant. She never conformed to the idea of being a submissive, obedient woman. Instead, her writings reveal a strong, independent spirit who found joy in beauty, poetry, and personal reflection. She is still celebrated today as one of Japan's greatest literary figures. Did you find this video informative or enjoyable? Tell us in the comments section below. Please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. We'll see you next time.